You know that saying, the one about how a single bad decision can completely derail your entire life, sending it careening off a cliff you did not even see until you were halfway down? Yeah, I'm basically the living, breathing poster child for that sentiment now. My name is Tessa. I am 29 years old, and just 6 short months ago, my life was something I thought was enviable. I was living in a cute 3 bedroom house, the kind with a little yard that needed mowing on Saturdays, and I had a husband, John, who adored me. Or at least he used to adore me. Now, my reality is starkly different. I am washing my hair in the communal bathroom of a Planet Fitness, the scent of disinfectant and other people's sweat a constant companion. And my nights are spent cramped in the back of my 2015 Honda Civic, a car that has seen far better days, much like its owner. Between us, and I mean this sincerely, I still do not think I deserve this. Not all of it, anyway. Everyone around me, the few people who still talk to me, they act like I committed some unspeakable, horrible crime. Like I am some kind of monster. But they were not the ones sitting alone, night after night, the silence of an empty house pressing in, while their husband was halfway across the world playing war hero. They did not feel the walls closing in, the loneliness coiling around their heart like a venomous snake. It all truly started last year when John got his deployment orders. 12 whole months. A full year he would be gone, stationed in some dusty, godforsaken hellhole overseas. I had been through deployments before, 3 of them to be exact, but this fourth one, it hit different. It landed on me with the weight of a physical blow. We had just bought our house, our perfect little nest, the one we had picked out paint swatches for, the one where we were supposed to build our future. I was stuck in this soul-crushing admin job, a monotonous cycle of spreadsheets and lukewarm coffee that barely paid enough to make a dent in our new mortgage. And then, just like that, I was facing a year of coming home to an empty house, the scent of John's cologne fading from his side of the closet, and Netflix asking its condescending little question, "Are you still watching?" Yes, Netflix, of course I am still watching. What else am I supposed to do? Am I supposed to take up knitting? Am I supposed to suddenly develop a passion for scrapbooking the empty days? My evenings stretched before me, long and barren, punctuated only by the hum of the refrigerator and the occasional car passing by on the street, each headlight beam a fleeting reminder of a world moving on without me. The military wives in our neighborhood, they are a special breed. These perfect little Stepford robots, always immaculate, always smiling, with their Tupperware containers full of cookies for bake sales and their perfectly organized care packages shipped off with military precision. They had their countdown calendars, marking off each day John, and the others were gone with a cheerful X in my head. I always called them the deployment cheerleaders. They were always posting those overly dramatic airport reunion videos, complete with slow motion running and tearful embraces. Calm down, Brittany, I would think. He was only gone for 6 months on a training exercise in Germany, not storming a beach under heavy fire. 2 weeks, just 2 solitary weeks after John left, after the last tearful video call from the tarmac, I ran into Caleb at the grocery store. It was in the cereal aisle of all mundane places. Caleb and we had a history. We dated for 3 long years before I ever met John. It ended as those things often do because he could not commit. Classic, right? The perennial bachelor, afraid of anything resembling a long-term plan. But there he was, standing under the fluorescent lights, looking at a box of Captain Crunch, and he looked good. Like, really good. He had filled out since I last saw him, not in a bad way, but in a solid, manly way. He had gotten some tattoos snaking up one arm, dark and intriguing, and there was a maturity in his eyes that had not been there before. He had grown up. We got to talking, the initial awkwardness melting away surprisingly fast. It turned out he had just moved back to town. He had been married briefly, and now he was divorced, trying to pick up the pieces. But he could not find a place to live, not a decent one anyway, because of his garbage credit score. His words, not mine. I found myself sympathizing, maybe a little too much. I remember standing there, a half-empty shopping cart beside me, and I mentioned how incredibly empty the house felt with John gone, how the silence was deafening. And then, before I could really think it through, the words just tumbled out of my mouth, almost of their own accord. You could stay in our spare room, I heard myself say, until you find a place if you want. It is just sitting there empty. I told myself it was innocent. I was just helping out an old friend, being a good person, a charitable soul. That is what good people do, right? They help those in need. The spare room was just collecting dust anyway. When I told John about it during our next video call, I kept my voice super casual, breezy almost. Oh, by the way, I said, as if it were an afterthought, remember my old friend Caleb from way back? Well, he is going through a bit of a rough patch, just got divorced and his credit is shot. So I told him he could use the guest room for a few weeks. Just until he gets back on his feet. John hesitated. I saw it in the slight flicker of his eyes on the grainy video feed, the almost imperceptible tightening of his jaw. I could tell he remembered exactly who Caleb was. He was not stupid. But then he did that thing, that John thing, where he tries to be the bigger person, the understanding, modern husband. Well, Tessa, he said slowly, his voice carefully neutral, if you think it is a good idea, then I trust you. That is John for you. Always trying to prove how evolved and trusting he is. Honestly, between us, it was kind of annoying sometimes, like maybe show a little jealousy, just a flicker. A tiny possessive growl. Would that have been too much to ask? But whatever, he said he trusted me, and that was that. Or so I thought. Caleb moved in the next weekend. He did not have much, just 2 duffel bags crammed with clothes and his beat-up acoustic guitar. At first, we were so careful around each other, like 2 strangers forced into cohabitation. It was all excuse me and after you, and bedroom doors were kept firmly closed. There was a palpable tension in the air, an awareness of boundaries that were yet to be defined. We navigated the kitchen like ships in the night, careful not to bump, careful not to intrude. But you can only be that kind of awkward for so long when you are the only 2 people rattling around in a 3-bedroom house. The silence, which had been my enemy, now felt charged with unspoken things. Within a month, maybe less, that initial caution began to erode. We started cooking dinner together. It began innocently enough. One of us would be in the kitchen, and the other would wander in, offering to chop vegetables or stir a sauce. Soon, it became a regular thing, and then came the movies on the couch. He would be watching something, and I would drift into the living room, intending to read a book, but somehow I would end up watching too. We would share a bowl of popcorn. We would comment on the plot. Normal roommate stuff, I told myself. Nothing physical was happening, not even a lingering touch. So in my mind, I was not doing anything wrong. I was just not alone anymore. John and I, we video chatted twice a week, like clockwork. Tuesdays and Saturdays. And I would make sure Caleb was nowhere around during those calls. He would conveniently be out for a run, or in his room with the door closed, music playing softly. I started making excuses to John for why I could not talk longer. Work was busy, I would say. My boss was piling on the projects. Or I was meeting friends for a quick drink, friends I had not actually seen in weeks. Sometimes I just said I was tired, a crushing fatigue that was not entirely a lie, though the source of it was more emotional than physical. The truth was that Caleb and I were planning to try this new Italian place that had just opened downtown. Or he was teaching me how to play poker at the kitchen table, the cards flapping softly against the wood. our laughter echoing a little too loudly in the otherwise quiet house. My friend Melissa from my soul-crushing admin job, she stopped by unexpectedly one evening. I had forgotten she was going to drop off some paperwork. I opened the door, and there she was, and there we were, Caleb and I, laughing on the couch, half-empty wine glasses on the coffee table, definitely sitting closer than just old friends probably should be. I think we were watching some silly comedy, and Caleb had just made a particular witty remark. Melissa got all weird and quiet almost immediately. Her eyes darted from me to Caleb, then back to me, a little frown etching itself between her eyebrows. She did not stay long. Later that night, my phone buzzed with a text from her. "Does John know how cozy you two are?" I stared at the message, a flare of anger, hot and sharp, rising in my chest. How dare she? I blocked her number. What business was it of hers anyway? Between us, I really wanted to text her back something scathing. Something about how she should go home to her legion of cats and her sad, single-serving frozen dinners and leave me and my life choices alone. These women, honestly, they are all so judgmental, so quick to cast stones, while their own lives are often teetering on the brink of some minor or major disaster. By month 4 of John's deployment and Caleb's indefinite stay, things between Caleb and me had become comfortable. Perhaps too comfortable. I started wearing cuter outfits around the house, nothing crazy, mind you. Just trading in my usual ratty sweatpants and oversized t-shirts for those black yoga pants that, I had to admit, made my butt look pretty good. And maybe, just maybe, putting on a little mascara before coming downstairs for breakfast. Little things Caleb noticed. Of course he noticed. He would whistle sometimes, a low, appreciative sound, or make some offhand comment about how John was a lucky guy. I would pretend to be annoyed, swatting at him playfully, while secretly, shamefully, loving the attention. I deserved to feel appreciated, right? John was off having his grand adventure with his military buddies, living a life of purpose and camaraderie, while I was stuck at home paying the bills, unclogging the sink and killing spiders by myself. He got to be the hero. I just got to be lonely. Caleb at least saw me. He saw Tessa, not just John's wife who was holding down the fort. Caleb and I, we fell into this routine that felt weirdly, surprisingly domestic. We would do our grocery shopping together on Sundays, debating over brands of pasta sauce and whether to buy organic or regular milk. We split the cooking duties pretty evenly. He was actually a decent cook, much better than John, if I am being honest. We even started this little tradition of Margarita Mondays. After a particularly grueling Monday at my job, Caleb suggested it. We would make a big pitcher of margaritas, sometimes a little too strong, and play cards. Usually poker, which he was still teaching me, or sometimes just silly games like Go Fish that would make us laugh until our sides hurt. One night, after maybe one too many of those margaritas, the salt still on our lips, Caleb started talking about his ex-wife. He mentioned how she never appreciated him, how she always made him feel small. And somehow that conversation veered, as those late-night, alcohol-fueled talks often do, into a whole discussion about how John did not really appreciate me either. He volunteered for this deployment, I told Caleb, the words tasting bitter in my mouth, the admission a surprise, even to myself. He could have requested to stay stateside, there were options, but no, he just had to go play hero again. I had not even fully admitted that depth of resentment to myself before, but once I said it out loud to Caleb, under the soft glow of the kitchen light, I could not stop thinking about it. It was like a dam had broken. The kiss was God. It was electric. It was like every cell in my body, every nerve ending that had been asleep, dormant for months, suddenly woke up, zinging with a life I had almost forgotten. I would like to say that I pushed him away after that first explosive kiss. I would like to say that I remembered my vows, my husband fighting for our country, all the things I was supposed to remember, but I did not. We ended up making out on the couch like a couple of teenagers, desperate and clumsy and hungry for contact. And it felt so good, so incredibly good to be wanted, to be touched, to not feel so damn lonely for once in what felt like an eternity. We did not go all the way. I still have that one remaining line, a flimsy barrier in my mind that I told myself I would not cross. But what we did do, what we allowed to happen on that couch in the candlelight, it was bad enough, more than bad enough. The next morning, I woke up feeling a confusing, churning mix of guilt and exhilaration. Caleb was in the kitchen, making pancakes like it was just another ordinary morning, like nothing monumental had shifted between us. I skipped my next scheduled video call with John entirely. I sent him a text claiming I had a vicious case of food poisoning. How could I possibly look at his trusting face on that screen after what I had done, after what I had let happen? But the thing is, after a few days, the sharp edges of the guilt started to fade, replaced by a dull ache and a growing sense of justification. I told myself that John was probably surrounded by female soldiers over there, young and fit and eager. Who knew what he was really doing, so far away, in a world I could not even imagine? He could not possibly understand how hard it was, being alone for months on end, year after year. If he really, truly loved me, if he really cherished me, he would not have left me alone for so long, so often. That is what I told myself. Caleb and we did not talk about the kiss directly. Not in any explicit terms, but things had changed between us. There was this current, this unspoken awareness that hummed in the air whenever we were near each other. It was a dangerous, thrilling possibility. We would sit closer on the couch now, our thighs sometimes touching. Our hands would brush when passing things to each other at the dinner table, and the contact would linger just a fraction of a second too long. We never defined what was happening between us, which, in a twisted way, made it easier for me to pretend it was not really happening at all, or at least that it was not as serious as it felt. It got to the point where I actively dreaded John's calls. Every "I love you" and every "I miss you so much, Tessa" felt like an accusation, a burning coal against my skin, even though he had no idea what was actually going on in his own house. When he asked, his voice tight with a frustration he was clearly trying to suppress, why Caleb was still living with us after 6 long months, I turned it around on him. I attacked. "You should be thanking him," I snapped. "Thanking him for keeping me company while you were off playing hero? Do you have any idea how lonely I have been? How empty this house is without you?" John looked hurt then, genuinely pained, and a nasty, shameful part of me actually enjoyed seeing it. Let him hurt a little. I had been hurting for months, hadn't I? The women in our military neighborhood, those deployment cheerleaders I so disdained, they definitely knew something was up. Or at least they suspected. I would catch their stares, their narrowed eyes and pursed lips, when Caleb and I would leave the house together to go grocery shopping, or when we would come home late with takeout containers, laughing a little too loudly. That which Shannon, from 3 doors down, the one with the perfectly manicured lawn and the perpetually smug expression, actually had the nerve to ask me, right there in the produce aisle of the grocery store, if John knew I had company so often. I smiled sweetly at her, a sickly sweet smile that did not reach my eyes. "John trusts me completely, Shannon," I said, my voice dripping with false sincerity. Some marriages actually have that. Trust, I mean. In my head, I was calling her every nasty name I could think of. Between us, these women were just jealous. Jealous that I had someone, anyone, to keep me warm at night, to share a meal with, while they were home alone, scrolling endlessly through their husbands' deployment photos and posting sad little memes about military wife life. By this point, Caleb had fully, completely settled in. His mail was coming to our address. He knew the security code to the garage. He had even, without asking me first, rearranged the living room furniture, and I let him. Because honestly, it did look better his way. John would comment sometimes, during our video calls, about how different the house looked in the background. "Did you move the couch?" He would ask, a puzzled frown on his face. I would just shrug it off. "Needed a change," I would say vaguely. "You have been gone forever, John. Things evolve." I started canceling plans with any friends who actually knew John well. Any friends who might ask uncomfortable questions or give me those judgmental glances. It was just easier that way. Instead, I would go out with Caleb to places where nobody knew us, little dive bars or out-of-the-way restaurants where we could almost pretend to be a real couple without the suffocating weight of my marriage of John's existence hanging over us. I told myself I was just having fun, just keeping myself occupied and sane until John returned. It was not like I was planning to leave John or anything. Caleb was just filling a void, a temporary measure. Then came the moment that changed everything. The moment the flimsy house of cards I had constructed began to wobble precariously. It was a random Tuesday night, deep into month 8 of John's deployment. I was lounging on the couch, wearing one of John's old, soft t-shirts, which, if I am being completely honest, I had started letting Caleb wear sometimes too. It felt like a small, secret rebellion. I was scrolling mindlessly through my phone while Caleb played some shoot-'em-up video game, the sound of virtual explosions filling the room. My phone buzzed with a text from John. "Surprise. Got some unexpected news? Call me when you can." I felt this immediate cold knot form in my stomach, but I told myself it was nothing. Probably just a change in his rotation schedule, or maybe something about his leave being approved. When I finally called him, his face appeared on my phone screen, beaming with this huge, happy smile that made my heart sink right down to my shoes. "I'm coming home early," he announced, his voice full of excitement. "Got a minor injury, nothing serious. Just a sprained ankle from a training exercise. But they are sending me and a few others back for some specialized physical therapy stateside. I will be home in 3 days." 3 days, 3 days. My mind went completely blank. I somehow managed to say all the right things to mimic his enthusiasm. "Oh my God, John, that is amazing. I cannot wait to see you. What a wonderful surprise." All the while, internally, I was having a complete and utter meltdown. As soon as we hung up, my hand shaking, I turned to Caleb, who had heard the whole conversation, his video game controller now resting silently in his lap. "You need to move out," I said, my voice barely a whisper. "Now, tonight." Caleb, who had been perfectly content to live rent-free in my house for 8 long months, using my utilities, eating my food, suddenly got all offended and indignant. "Where am I supposed to go on such short notice, Tessa?" he asked, like it was somehow my problem, my fault. "This is crazy." I reminded him, my voice rising with panic, that this arrangement was always supposed to be temporary. But he just laughed, a short, harsh sound. "Temporary? Tessa, come on. We have been playing house for months now. Do not act like this has not been working out pretty well for both of us." The next 2 days were absolute chaos. I was cleaning like a maniac, a woman possessed, trying to erase any and every trace of how domestic Caleb and I had become. I threw all his toiletries from the spare bathroom into a cardboard box, collected his scattered belongings from every corner of the house, a book here, a pair of socks there, his damn guitar picks everywhere. I washed the sheets on every single bed, even though we had never, ever crossed that final line into sharing mine and John's bed. Caleb dragged his feet the entire time, only half-heartedly packing, all while making these little cutting comments designed to make me feel guilty, to make me feel like I was the one betraying him. "So that is it, huh?" he said, stuffing a shirt haphazardly into his duffel bag. John snaps his fingers and I am out on the street. Nice. And then later, I thought what we have been sharing, meant something to you, Tessa. Or are you just going to slip right back into your perfect little military wife routine now, like none of this ever happened? I was in the middle of trying to explain to him yet again that he absolutely needed to be gone, completely gone, before John arrived the next day. When headlights swept across the living room window, a car door slammed shut outside. My heart stopped dead in my chest. It could not be. John was not supposed to be home until tomorrow afternoon. But there he was, John. He stood on our front porch, his duffel bag at his feet, leaning slightly on a crutch, his face tired from travel, but lit up with a happy, expectant smile. And there I was, frozen in the doorway, utter panic written all over my face. And behind me, visible over my shoulder, Caleb lounged on our couch, a beer in his hand, looking completely infuriatingly at home. The look on John's face as he took in the scene, I will never forget it as long as I live. It was not anger, not even shock, not at first. It was this awful, slow dawning realization, this quiet, profound hurt that was somehow a million times worse than if he had started screaming or throwing things. His eyes moved from Caleb to me, then to the half-packed boxes scattered around the living room, then back to me. "What is going on, Tessa?" he asked, his voice dangerously quiet. I tried to play it off, to salvage something, anything. "John, you're early," I said, my voice sounding fake and high-pitched even to my own ears. I was just helping Caleb pack up. He was just about to leave. My voice sounded fake, even to my own ears. John just stared at me, then his gaze shifted to Caleb, who, the bastard, had not even bothered to stand up. "How long has this been going on?" John asked, his voice flat, devoid of all emotion. Before I could even formulate a lie, a denial, anything, Caleb, that snake, that absolute cowardly snake, said, "About 6 months now, ma'am. Sorry, it just kind of happened, just like that," making it sound like we had been having a full-blown, passionate affair for half a year. Yes, we had kissed a few times now. Yes, maybe we had gotten a little handsy on occasion after too much wine. But it was not what he was implying, not the sordid, extended affair his words painted. John did not yell. He did not break things. He just looked at me, his eyes, the eyes that had once looked at me with so much love, so much adoration, now filled with a cold, hard disappointment. "I need you both out of my house," he said, his voice still quiet, but with an edge of steel I had never heard before. Tonight, I could not believe what I was hearing. "Your house?" I spluttered, indignation rising. "This is our house, John. I have been the one living here, paying the bills, keeping it running while you have been gone. The house is in my name, Tessa," John said quietly, his gaze unwavering. "My military housing allowance pays the mortgage. And my friend Ryan has been taking pictures of what has been going on here for weeks now. He sent them to me. I have known something was up for a while. I did not want to believe it was this." I started crying then, big, ugly sobs, partly from shock, but mostly from a furious, helpless anger. This was so unfair. He leaves me alone for months on end, and then he has the nerve to kick me out. Because I found some comfort, some companionship to ward off the crushing loneliness. I turned to Caleb, expecting him to back me up, to defend me, to stand with me against John. Instead, he was already grabbing his jacket from the back of the chair. "I will crash at Tommy's place tonight," he mumbled, not even looking at me, his eyes fixed on the floor. "Text me when you figure things out," and just like that, he was gone. Scurrying away. The guy who had been professing how much he cared, who had been my constant companion for 8 months, who knew every detail of my life, he bailed. He completely bailed the second things got even remotely complicated. I stood there in stunned silence as the front door closed behind him. John just watched this unfold with this eerily calm, almost detached expression. "You have an hour," he said, his voice flat. "Pack what you need for tonight. Come back for the rest when I am at work tomorrow." He limped past me, not even a glance in my direction, and went into the bedroom, our bedroom, and shut the door firmly behind him. I was in complete disbelief. This could not be happening. I started frantically calling Caleb, but his phone went straight to voicemail. Every single time. I tried my friends, the ones I had blown off and ignored for months in favor of Caleb's company. They either did not answer, or they made vague, uncomfortable excuses about why I could not stay with them. Even my own sister, my own flesh and blood, said she did not want to get involved in my mess. Between us, everyone, absolutely everyone, abandoned me when I needed them most. With nowhere else to go, and John literally watching the clock from the living room, I threw whatever I could into a couple of suitcases, clothes, toiletries, my laptop, some jewelry John had given me over the years. As I was dragging my bags towards the front door, my vision blurred with tears, John reappeared. He was holding an envelope. "Divorce papers," he said flatly, handing it to me. "I had them drawn up last month. After Ryan sent me the pictures of you and Caleb kissing in the driveway, I was going to talk to you when I got home. Try to work things out, maybe. Suggest counseling. But this," he gestured vaguely around the messy living room, the evidence of Caleb's prolonged stay, "this is beyond fixing now." I could not process what was happening. It felt like a nightmare. "You cannot do this," I kept saying over and over. Where am I supposed to go? What am I supposed to do? But John just opened the front door wider, a clear, unyielding gesture for me to leave. That first night, I stayed in a cheap, grimy motel on the outskirts of town, the kind that smells of stale cigarettes and despair. I still believed, foolishly, that Caleb would come through, that he would call, that he would let me stay with him until I figured things out. We had a connection, right? All those months, all those shared moments, they had to mean something. Wrong. So incredibly wrong. When I finally got hold of him the next day, after calling him about 50 times, he laughed. He actually laughed when I told him John had kicked me out and I had nowhere to go. "Tessa, Tessa, Tessa," he said, his voice light, almost cruel. "It was fun, it really was. But I am not looking for anything serious, you know that? You have got way too much baggage now, honey." Then, as if that was not enough, he had the absolute nerve to add, "Besides, I have been talking to Kylie again." Kylie, his ex-wife. The woman he had supposedly been so devastated over, the one whose supposed cruelty had made him so relatable to me. That was when reality hit me hard, like a physical blow to the stomach. Within a week, my joint bank accounts with John were emptied, or at least my access was cut off. His military pay had always been our main source of income. My part-time, soul-crushing admin job barely covered food and gas, let alone the deposit for an apartment in our expensive area. John had already told everyone in our social circle his version of events, heavily slanted, I am sure. So former friends crossed the street to avoid me. The military wives community, the one I had mocked and avoided for so long, close ranks around John completely, like a protective phalanx. I was the enemy now, the villain. I couch-surfed with a few acquaintances for a while, staying until their sympathy or their patience wore thin, then moving on to the next reluctant host. But eventually, I ran out of couches. And that is how I ended up living in my car, showering at Planet Fitness, and using the free Wi-Fi at McDonald's to search for jobs I was not qualified for and apartments I could not possibly afford. I even had to quit my admin job eventually. They drastically reduced my hours after John's friend, Ryan's wife actually, who worked in the same office park, spread all sorts of nasty rumors about me. The absolute kicker, the final twist of the knife. Through mutual connections on social media, I discovered that Caleb had moved in with Kylie, his ex-wife, barely 2 weeks after John had kicked me out of our house. All his excuses about his bad credit, about not being able to find a place, they were all lies. Complete and utter fabrications. He had just wanted free housing, a comfortable place to land, while he worked on getting back with his ex. I was just convenient, a means to an end. I even ran into Melissa one day outside a coffee shop. She looked right through me at first, then a flicker of recognition. Instead of sympathy, her face hardened. "I tried to warn you about Caleb, Tessa," she said, her voice cold. "He did something very similar to my cousin a few years back. Played the victim, moved in, caused chaos, and then disappeared when he got what he wanted. I told you he was bad news that night I came over. I told you he was a user, but you did not want to hear it." I just stared at her, speechless. I barely remembered her specific words from that night, only my own annoyance. Had she really tried to tell me something more specific? Had I been that blind, that wrapped up in my own narrative of loneliness? About 3 months into this delightful new chapter of car living, I spotted John and some woman coming out of our favorite Italian restaurant, our old date night spot. She was pretty in that effortless, natural girl next door kind of way that I could never quite pull off. He was smiling, really smiling, the way he used to smile at me back when things were good. His sprained ankle seemed to be fully healed as they walked to his car, his arm casually, possessively around her waist. I sank down in my seat, praying they would not notice the dirty Honda with the steamed-up windows tucked away in the corner of the parking lot. So here I am. This is my life now. Living in my car while John moves on with his shiny new girlfriend, and Caleb plays happy families with his supposedly awful ex-wife. Everyone, absolutely everyone, treats me like I am the villain in this story. But what about John abandoning me for months on end, year after year? What about Caleb using me, manipulating me, and then throwing me away like trash? What about all those so-called friends, and even my own sister, who ghosted me the second I actually needed them? Nobody considers that I was just trying not to be lonely. I was just trying to feel something, anything, other than abandoned and invisible. Yesterday, I saw on social media that John sold our house. Our house. He is moving to Houston with his new girlfriend. She is in the military too, apparently. Some officer he met during his physical therapy. They look disgustingly happy in their photos, all sunshine and bright, promising futures. Meanwhile, I am trying to scrape together enough money for a security deposit on a rundown apartment in the worst part of town, because nobody else will rent to me with my credit score, which absolutely tanked after John took me off all our joint accounts and credit cards. And Caleb? Caleb and Kylie are engaged now. They are having a baby. A baby. After he told me for 3 solid years during our relationship that he was not ready for marriage or children, that he might never be. I guess he just was not ready for marriage or children with me. Between us, I truly hope Kylie realizes what a manipulative user he is before it is too late, but she probably will not. She always was kind of desperate, if I recall correctly. The military wives, those paragons of virtue, they still give me death glares whenever I happen to run into them around town. Usually when I am trying to look presentable enough to use the Wi-Fi at the library. Like they are all so perfect, please. I know for a fact that Shannon's husband cheated on her during his first deployment. And Danielle's husband came back from his last tour with a serious drinking problem he is still not admitting to. But sure, I am the monster here. I am the one to be shunned because I let an ex-boyfriend keep me company when I was abandoned and starving for any kind of human connection. Some days I think about just driving away, moving to a new city, starting completely fresh somewhere else where no one knows my name or my story. But I have no money, no savings, no references for jobs or apartments. And apparently, I have no marketable skills beyond making men think I'm worth coming home to, or at least worth sticking around for a while, only to be discarded when it is no longer convenient for them. I have applied to jobs in Dallas, Phoenix, even Chicago, but the responses are few and far between, and the offers, when they do come, are for minimum wage gigs that are worse than what I can scrounge up here doing odd temp jobs. People say I should have seen this coming, that I made my choices and now I have to live with the consequences. And okay, fine, maybe they are partly right. But I did not choose for John to leave me alone for a year, not really. I did not choose for Caleb to be a lying, manipulative user who preyed on my loneliness. I did not choose for Melissa to give me a vague warning I was too self-absorbed to understand. I did not choose for everyone I knew to believe the absolute worst of me without ever hearing my side of the story. The real problem, if you want to know the truth, is that everyone expects military wives to be these perfect, patient, plastic saints who just sit around knitting patriotic cozies and patiently waiting for their heroes to come home. We are supposed to suffer in silence, be eternally grateful for their sacrifice, and never, ever complain or show any weakness. Well, I was suffering. I was lonely and sad and so incredibly tired of being the one left behind, the one whose life was always on hold. But nobody wants to hear that part of the story, do they? No, they just want the dramatic reunion videos and the stoic, smiling wife. So, yes, I made a mistake letting Caleb move in. I made a bigger mistake kissing him and letting things go further emotionally than they ever should have. But do I deserve to lose everything? To be homeless, friendless, jobless, and treated like I am nothing, like I am human garbage? No, I do not think I do. I deserved better than what John gave me in the end, better than what Caleb gave me, and certainly better than what this life has given me recently. And someday, when I am finally back on my feet, they will all see. They will all see what they threw away, what they misjudged. John will realize his perfect new military girlfriend is not so perfect after all, that she has flaws and needs he cannot meet. Caleb will get bored playing family man with Kylie, just like he got bored with me, just like he got bored with everyone before her. And all those people, all those so-called friends and judgmental neighbors who turned their backs on me, they will regret not being there when I needed them, when a little compassion could have made all the difference. They will. Until then, I will be here washing my hair in a public gym sink, sleeping in my aging Honda, and wondering how my entire life went so spectacularly horribly wrong when all I really wanted, all I ever truly wanted, was not to be so utterly and completely alone.